all loose items in the pouch in front of you.
And have a safe and informative journey.
Hello, I'm Nathan Hartman, and this is Dreamfinders, a podcast about the creative culture of Disney theme parks. Evan and Britta Kasperzak have quite the history of acting, dance, and Disney. Having met in college, the two's journey led Evan to perform in the original Broadway cast of Newsies, and then as a choreographer for Disney World. At the same time, Britta found herself training young Jedi at Hollywood Studios and discovering an all-new related passion. Friends of mine, I am more than happy to chat with Evan and Britta about their Disney experiences and the challenges of balancing a romance with personal creative goals. Plus, Britta has a revelation about her own artistic origins and how they might be intertwined with Epcot. All of that and more is coming right up on Dreamfinders. Evan and Britta Kasperzak, welcome to Dreamfinders. Thanks for showing up.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
So both of you have a great history around the Disney company in many unique ways, both inside and outside of the parks. But what I wanted to start with was with Britta. You grew up in St. Petersburg, correct? In Florida?
Yeah.
So were you a Disney local? Did you have the whole AP thing when you were a kid, or what was your relationship with the parks at that age?
So I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger. His name's Alex. And he was obsessed with Disney from the moment he was born. So my parents, of course, because we were close, we did go when I was very young. And then once my brother came around, he was like, yes, please. So pretty much every birthday that he had, we would go. We were definitely annual pass holders. We would check out all the different resorts, and we were definitely there frequently, very frequently. And I think his love for it really, it just helped us to continue going throughout the years. And also, you know, we always had friends or people that worked there because of the area we lived in. So we were able to always like have connections in that way. And so, yeah, I'd say like we were definitely a Disney family, full force, many memories there growing up.
Tell us a little bit about some of those memories. Do you have early memories of things that are no longer around at the parks that mean something to you, or was there a show that stuck out? Or
when I think about it back then, I definitely I still think of It's a Small World always, but I also think of like a lot of the shows, because that was the big thing that my brother loved so much, is the shows, which makes sense because he's a scenic designer now and that's like his world, and he works at Disney. But I remember the Lion King show, the old one. I remember that. I also remember just like eating my way through everywhere. That was always a big thing for us, was like, how many snacks can we consume in this amount of time? But I also remember the feeling of at the end of the day, we would get back, we would be so exhausted and get back in the car and like just have this feeling of contentment that we just spent like a whole day at this magical place. And like, I remember like being so excited, but so tired in that ride home. I would be trying to keep my eyes open to the last minute, but I just couldn't because I just was like wired from all the fun things we had explored that day. And then, yeah, I think one thing I really remember is getting to explore the different resorts, because we would go for like a weekend and we went to Animal Kingdom Lodge when it first opened. That was magical. And like the Wilderness Lodge, which still to this day is like my favorite. And then the Polynesian Resort was just like so special to me. I remember going and like hanging out on the beach and like the kid playground, and then going to like I don't know exactly what they call it, but it's for the kids. So when the parents wanted to go out for their night on the town, they would like drop the kids off there. But I remember going there and eating like mac and cheese and like hanging out with other kids my age. And, like,
again, the food.
Yeah, I have a lot of food memories. But yeah, the Polynesian Resort was like one of my most special memories, just because it was just a really cool tropical wonderland. And they do such a good job of transforming everything. It was really cool. And that will always stick with me.
Now, you seem to, remember things through food. Did you have a special treat that that was like the one you always had to get?
I mean, I always think of Mickey bars. because they're just the best still to this day. But
That Dole Whip.
yeah, the Dole Whip I didn't have when I was younger, so I'd say probably the Mickey bars. It was like the ice cream treats that we would get, you know?
Yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Now, Evan, you grew up in Michigan, which I don't know if you know is not close to Florida.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
You've heard.
Did you have early memories of Disney, or like did it come from a different place? Was it not park related, or?
Yeah, I mean, like my early Disney memories are definitely more like cinematic. We traveled quite a bit as a family, and I grew up doing dance competitions, so we ended up in Orlando many times. But I didn't necessarily spend much time in the parks, and definitely not time that I don't have big, bright memories of any of it. But I mean, you know, growing up with all of the classic films and the like made for TV Disney Channel movies and all of those things. Oh yeah. That's definitely more of my Disney memories. Yeah, I mean, I remember like going to the theaters to see Newsies when it came out and flopped, and I like have very vivid memories of Brink, which was made for a Disney Channel movie that was all about aggressive inline skating.
Oh yeah, everyone remembers that one.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I definitely do. That kid was hot.
Oh God. Yeah. So those are definitely more of my Disney memories. I mean, I remember going to Epcot when I was down in Orlando for a dance competition, and
yeah, Epcot's still my favorite.
Epcot's awesome.
Yeah.
What makes you guys love Epcot so much?
I mean, it's just so cool to feel like you're exploring different cultures. And I just loved going to all the different restaurants, you know. My dad's like, we're German, so we're going to go to the German restaurant. But it was like so fun because everyone's like polkaing and dancing, and you're just eating like sausage and like just living your best life. And also, yeah, the shows at like each one that were authentic to that culture.
Yeah.
I remember watching the one it was like this really cool like Japanese dance, and then also with it they were creating these like candies that were they were almost like little like glass blown glass animals, but it was candy. Of course it goes back to food. But I remember that like still to this day. It was so cool. And I always have loved the Mexico ride.
Now, this might have more to do with Britta, but we'll see. Do you feel, either of you, that watching cast members on your trips affected your interest in acting and dance in any way?
I mean, I'd say it was probably some of the first performances I've ever seen. So yeah, like having that be this open part of every time we went there, it's everywhere you look. There are performers and different, you know, entertainers and people, even every single cast member, you know, every staff member known as cast members, they all were just alive and very like present and giving you some entertainment vibe. And so, yeah, I think it was probably some of the first experiences I had with that. And I have no doubt that it like shaped me, because my brother and I went to a little school called Grace Lutheran, and there was no theater program in that. So when I think about it, I'm like, that probably was a huge reason why we both got into the entertainment field, because we were like surrounded by that quite frequently. You know what I mean? That's so weird. It's like I'm thinking of this for the first time. I'm like, whoa, because then like everyone's like, how did you get into theater? And really, it was my brother and I were like, we begged our little Lutheran school to start putting shows on. And we would like try to go around and do performances. Like me and my friends created a band called Alt Bomb, and we'd go around and sing Spice Girl songs to all the classes. But we literally just decided that on our own. So when people are like, how did that happen? I'm like, oh, I just wanted to perform. So I started asking them if I could. But I'm like, why did I want to do that? You know, it's interesting bringing it back all the way to why I felt the urge to do that. And it could totally be just the influence of all the performances at Disney. Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm glad I've opened up like a whole new world for you.
Changed my life. A whole new world.
epiphanies.
A new exciting point of view. Anyway.
So, Evan, if you didn't have connections with the park necessarily as much, I mean, you still had major artistic influences at a young age. What were those?
Well, one of my older brothers is also in the performing arts business. And I'm 7 years younger than him. So I grew up around theater. My parents did community theater. And then obviously my brother started dancing, and, then being around him influenced me. I was like, oh, well, if he's doing it, like, maybe I should give it a try. So I did. And I've been dancing since I was 6 years old. And I've had some huge influences by, Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and watching those classic like MGM movie musicals really is just so inspiring. And that's where the basis of my love of theater and the arts comes from. And as I mentioned earlier, like watching the film version of Newsies was like one of the first times I got to see like a bunch of guys dancing. And that is, as a young man, that is definitely an inspiring thing to see. You're like, oh my God, look at all these dudes and they're all dancing and it's great.
Did you both, you were doing dance competitions at a very young age. Did you both do theater as well? I know you said, Britta, that you didn't have theater in was it elementary and middle? Did you get to a point where you're doing community theater or things of that nature?
Yeah. So basically, went to a school, Grace Lutheran School. It was preschool through 8th grade. And it was a very small, like, private school. And I always, we had choir. So through that, and I did like handbells. I was like, man, I just want to do more. And because it was such a small school, they really like took into consideration what the kids wanted to do. And we actually had a really incredible music teacher, Dr. Bill. And then another really awesome teacher came, Mrs. Tippett, and she was doing the music stuff, but she was definitely interested in bringing theater to our school. And we basically me and my friends who I had gotten to be on board with me about all this, and my brother in his class, we just kind of started like approaching them, asking if there's any way we could do performance stuff. And so for the first time, I think it was my 5th grade year, we did a Christian-inspired performance called Live It to the Max. And then they decided after that year, because it went so well, it was literally all like original songs written by Dr. Bill. And after that, everyone loved it so much that they're like, we should do this more. So then they decided that every other year they would do like a junior, I don't know what to call it.
Like a junior version of
a musical. And then the other year in between would be like a Christian musical. So they did the Live It to the Max thing, and then the next year they decided that their first musical would be Annie Junior. And this was when I was actually in 7th grade at this point. And of course I auditioned for it, and I ended up getting Annie, which was amazing. And I remember there was drama between me and the 8th graders. They were like, can't believe a 7th grader got Annie. They were like, there was a lot of drama going on.
Oh, classic middle school drama.
Yeah, but so I did that, and that like really sparked something. And like my whole family my extended family from Illinois like flew out and watched it. And it was like a big deal because I was the first person, honestly, in our family who did any kind of theatrical thing. So that really sparked something. And from there I was like, I'm hooked. I got to do this. And my brother followed suit. He was always into like doing shows at home with me and stuff. So he was all on board the second that, that door was open. And we all talked to counselors when we were graduating 8th grade to go into high school, because there are so many high schools in our area, and a lot of them are specific to different subjects, different, areas. So there's a performing arts high school in our area. And once I realized that was an option, I was like, yes, please, I want to go there. So I worked with my music teacher to like get an audition together and ended up getting into that. So then from there, I went to Pinellas County Center for the Arts for high school, and I was a music theater major for all 4 years of that. And from there, it just was like always a part of me. From probably 5th grade on, I like identified as an artist and always will, And I was lucky that my area had a lot of options and a lot of people supporting me to do it. So I was very, very like encouraged and supported to go down that path, which is awesome.
Evan, you mentioned, of course, that your family was very theatrical, and it feels like you probably played a baby at some point in some performance of something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. You know, I know those sort of drama families that you're just sort of, you're in theater whether you like it or not. When did you sort of separate out like this is what we do as a family from this is what I like to do?
Talking about playing a baby, my first stage appearance was as the youngest prince in The King and I.
Very good.
And they dyed my hair like jet black with like spray dye.
Weren't you bribed? Like, what was
I like went through all of rehearsals and I was totally into it. And then like the week of the show, I was like, nope, I'm done. So my mom bribed me, as any good mother does, in order to get me to finish the show.
As any good musical producer does. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I was bribed with action figures. I got like, I don't know, like one every other show. So I ended up with like 3 new superhero action figures. And then I got some sort of big castle thing.
So at a young age, you knew your worth.
Yeah, exactly. I knew the value of my work. It's like, listen, I know you need me. What are you willing to pay me for it?
So when does that split out into you not needing action figures to wanting to do it?
Somewhere in that like 6-7 range when I started dancing, and it was a thing that I genuinely enjoyed for me. I did take a break when I was like a young teenager. I like stopped dancing completely for 1.5 years, 2 years. I played all of the sports and I raced go-karts and I like tried everything I could get my hands on. And then I realized that none of these other things are nearly as enjoyable as dancing and performing. So I went back to it and I've never stopped.
Never stopped?
Never, ever stopped.
So eventually you both end up at the same college. Tell us how you both met.
Oh.
Well, oddly enough, we met right before Britta came to Illinois Wesleyan.
Because Evan's a year older, so...
Yeah, I was already at school, and we were introduced. We both did this summer program called the Broadway Theater Project, and they have like a big final show. And I was at BTP as a student.
And Broadway Theater Project's in Florida, so I always had friends who were involved with it. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Yes. No, you're good. We can tag team the story.
Great.
So it was like after the final show, and I was in the lobby, just like saying hi to people. And one of Britta's friends was like, "Oh, Evan, come here. I want you to meet my friend Britta. She's going to Illinois Wesleyan next year." And I think our interaction was literally like, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Evan. I'll see you next year. Bye."
That was literally it. Yes.
So then, Britta came to school, and we like barely crossed paths. Your first year, your freshman year, my sophomore year.
Yeah, but I definitely had my eyes on him. All the freshman girls, we had we all had to be involved in a show. We weren't able to perform our first year because they wanted to make sure that we saw the other side of things. So we had to be like either doing costumes or tech or something, which I think is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I think it's really smart.
And so me and a lot of the freshman girls were in like the costume. We were the costumers for the Scrooge the musical that year. And Evan was in that. And we did this game where like, what's your dream crush? We called it your DC. And it was like someone in the program, and we all chose someone. And I mean, I had my eye on him, but I was like, obviously mine's Evan. So then for like the whole year, we all knew what our DCs were, and we'd like be at parties, and I'd like, know secretly that I liked him, or like try to talk to him, but he always had a girlfriend or something. And so yeah, we weren't close at all.
Yeah. And then the next year.
Well, the summer in between.
The summer in between, we were back at the Broadway Theater Project.
And this year I went to it as a performer, and he was back there. So we got to kind of
chat a little bit and
some alone time with your DC, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we ate lunch together.
We had lunch
one day,
together that one day.
And also, mind you, Evan is like famous when it comes to Broadway Theater Project because him and his brother had gone for like 8 years. It was insane. They were like a staple in it, and they're incredible performers. So like everyone already had talent crushes on them, like everyone at Broadway Theater Project. But like I had like this in because I went to school with him. So yeah, we would like talk a little, and then at the end performance, he kissed me on the cheek and was like, "See you at school." And I was like, "That's it, I'm hooked." And so
that was the moment.
Yeah,
You're like,
I was like, "You will be mine."
going back. You will be mine.
So then when we first got back, it was his junior year, my sophomore year. We had to like audition for the whole season of shows in like the first week, and we ended up like being chosen to read together for
I think it was
Of
for
the
Of the
I
I Sing,
Sing.
yeah.
And so we had a lot of time to like chat when we were waiting to go. And I don't know, we just like hit it off.
Yeah,
we
we
were
hit it
talking
off.
about like music and
We
all
hit it
kinds of
off.
things.
We had a lot of commonalities and similar interests and, assorted things. And then
We talked about music, and then
yeah.
you're like, "I'm gonna make you a mixtape."
I did.
Oh,
I did
wow.
make you a mixtape. Yeah, a mixed CD.
Yeah, it was a mixed disc,
Mixed disc.
but
Yeah, and then
it was the most deceptive mixed disc ever. It was such mixed signals.
well, in my defense, it's because there was a bunch of music from that summer at BTP that Britta had asked for, so those things were not necessarily conducive to a mixed CD. So I put those on there, and we had talked about Ben Folds, and he had just come out with the song with Regina Spektor, "You Don't Know Me." And
it's all about "You Don't Know Me at All." That's like all the words to it.
Pretty much.
But I was like, oh, I know she likes Regina Spektor and Ben Folds, so I definitely have to put this on there. And then I like strategically placed other songs with, the advice of my other college friends, and
Anyway, it all worked out.
it all worked out. Yeah.
Sometime in college, Evan, you auditioned for season 4 of Fox's So You Think You Can Dance.
Yes, I did.
What made you decide to do that?
It was totally on a whim. One of our other friends mentioned that So You Think You Can Dance was auditioning in, I think it was Wisconsin. Yeah, it was in Milwaukee during our spring break. I was like, oh, like that's perfect timing. I have family in Wisconsin, and obviously if it's spring break, I don't have to worry about missing class. So I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do it, dude. And then he ended up being like, no, actually, I'm not gonna do this. But I had already,
You should.
yeah, I had already like decided I was going to. So I did it. And yeah, I ended up making it through the Milwaukee call, and then got passed on to Vegas, and I made it through to the end of Vegas. And then when the top 20 cut came, I did not make it, which is fine.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, what was that like? What was the feeling in you? I mean, it was a whim to get into it, but at that point, you must have had some inclination that you wanted to do it further.
Yeah, I mean, that initial audition in Milwaukee was, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I'd watched a little bit of the show. I hadn't talked to anyone who had auditioned or been through any of it. So there's just so many tiny things that you don't know until you've actually gotten to experience it. But yeah, I mean, getting through to the end of Vegas for season 4 was a surprise. Like I said, I had no idea what to expect. I knew it would be stressful, and I knew I would be doing all kinds of things out of my dance comfort zone. But yeah, I didn't necessarily think I would make it nearly as far as I did on season 4. I finished the auditions for season 4, and I went back to school and continued my time there. And the head of our music theater department, Scott Susan, called me into his office one day and was like, so, are you going to go back and audition for So You Think You Can Dance this next season? I was like, I don't know, maybe. I haven't really thought about it. And he very seriously looks at me and goes, I think you should go back and audition again. All right, sure. Why not? So I reached out to my brother to see if he wanted to come with me, because he's also a fantastic dancer, and he choreographed all my solos on the show. So I reached out to him. He was like, yeah, I would love to audition with you. And I have some thoughts on how to like build a brand for the two of us. So he came up with this kind of Broadway brothers theme for us, which is who we are. You know, we're two big nerds, and we love classic jazz and hats and ties and all of that stuff. That really is who we are. But he just, you know, his plan was to...
He's brilliant. He thought of a story, which is exactly what you do.
Yeah.
In order to hook America. You know what I mean? They love a good story.
Yeah, producers want something that they can drag out and find drama in and all sorts of business. So it works well that way. Full disclosure to the audience, at about this time is when I met Evan.
Yes.
So this is why I have a little connection, and I hate to not mention it, because your video for season 4 was what inspired a filmmaking friend of mine to reach out to you for a small short film we were doing. And we I think you were like, you had either already auditioned and knew you were going to be on, or you weren't sure.
It was,
I can't remember.
Right after the Memphis audition is when I drove to Indiana, directly after Memphis, which is where I auditioned for season 5 with my brother. I finished that audition. I hopped in the car and I drove to Indiana to shoot After Hours with you guys.
And we made a tiny little film. And then, so as you said, you and your brother end up on the show, like legitimately in the top 20. What was that like? Because, you know, you are starting this brand with your brother, this sort of like storyline that they can use, which is, of course, just your real life, but it's a good storyline because you're both auditioned and together. But you're also competing against your brother. So what was that balance like, or did it even ever feel like competition between you two?
I mean, fortunately for us, like, you know, my brother Ryan really is, he's my best friend, other than you, Britta.
Yeah, good answer.
You know, during the Vegas, like the Vegas portion of the auditions, that competition thought definitely never crossed our minds. It was like, we're gonna do this together, and that was kind of our state of mind the whole way through. Which, you know, fortunately, even though the show is a competition, you're not necessarily like in direct head-to-head with anybody.
You're not like all doing the exact same dance.
Yeah, or like, you know, I'm trying to score baskets directly against my brother, and if I get 10 points, then he loses. You know, it's so subjective, and we were definitely of the mindset of, why can't we both succeed? Unfortunately, it got to the end of Vegas, and there's one slot left, and the two Kasprzak brothers are still remain.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you move on. And Britta, I want to ask you what your thought process is in the midst of all this, because it's a big deal, and it's also at the same time you're dating and you're doing your life, and things are sort of getting figured out, and this thing kind of is a good problem.
You're so right.
So what was that experience like for you?
Oh, man. High drama. So, yeah, at this point, when he found out that he was going to be going and doing the show, we had been dating for like 8 months. So it was very new and like very, you know, up in the air and scary. And yeah, we're still in school, you know, and we're aware we're young and it's like a young romance or whatever. But we were like, oh, we're going to see how this goes. And yeah, it was incredibly surreal for like pretty much the whole time. But also it was, I will say, like one of the most stressful experiences you could probably ever have in a relationship, especially in the beginning, because he just had to go all in, you know, and I understood that, but it's hard when you're in a relationship and all of a sudden that person who's been giving you like their time and their attention, they just can't do that anymore. So we got to the point where we were not even really able to talk on the phone very often. So we were like, we had a 2-hour difference.
3.
Well, 3 once I was at home in Florida on break, but when I was at school in Illinois, we had a 2-hour difference.
Yes.
Anyway, there was always a time difference. And he was so busy with like rehearsals and practice and everything that we would hopefully get to talk like a few times a week for like a second before he like passed out of exhaustion.
I was literally falling asleep on the phone.
All the time, yeah. So yeah, of course that gave me thoughts like, does he like me? Does he still care? Whatever. And then luckily I have an incredible support system with my family, and they were like, you know that he likes you. You know that this is a very specific situation and he can't give you his attention right now, but he will. But that'll be the teller is when he's done and we'll see how, you guys get back to normal. And so it was just kind of this weird limbo. And I visited him when he was on the show, but we were not able to stay in the same area. We couldn't even go step foot into their apartment. So I stayed with his mom. God bless Barb Kasprzak. She raised 3 boys, and then all of a sudden she was living with a very, very dramatic and emotionally raw, 19-year-old. And we, I was going through the whole gambit of does he care? Is this going to work? I want to see him. But basically I spent the whole 2 weeks just with his mom and maybe seeing him for an hour every once in a while. So there were many, many tears. And my mom had many conversations with his mom. She's going to be okay. It's just she's just going through it right now. And
yeah. My mom raising 3 boys was so,
is this normal?
Is this normal? All this crying. Is this how it goes all the time?
Was there also just a vibe of, and I think this is for any performer, it doesn't really matter who you are. I mean, you're always happy when your friend or, someone you're connected to, have a relationship with in the arts does well. But at the same time, you're always sort of well, that's good for them, but what about me?
Totally.
Did you have that vibe as well? I mean, I think it's a pure and natural feeling to have. I don't think it's a bad thing, but.
No, totally. It's kind of funny because I don't really remember having that vibe. Because I think also he is so much of a dancer and I knew I would never be on So You Think You Can Dance.
Sure.
That wasn't I was more of singer, actor, dancing on the side. So I'd say more than anything, it was just more the thought oh man, he's taking off and he's making it. And how will that change our relationship and just him, because once you kind of experience success, it changes you, and it doesn't always change you in a negative way, but it definitely changes you because you're different and you're experiencing something totally new. So it was more just being scared that would change or our relationship would change based on, his new experiences and new life that he was living. That was the big fear, I think.
Evan, you end up, to make a long story short about So You Think You Can Dance, you end up in 3rd place.
Correct.
At the end of the season, and it's a good way to go out. You're through the whole show. You end up doing a tour with the other contestants in the top. I think it was the whole 20. I can't remember exactly who was on.
We did the tour with the top 12.
Top 12, and that's all going on. Did you? I'm trying to remember how this all kind of pans out. You end up going back and finishing college, correct?
Yes.
The both of you. And then, what do you do? Where do you end up post-college?
I did the tour the first semester of my senior year, which, thanks to the amazing faculty and staff at Illinois Wesleyan, they allowed me to get
internship credits.
Yes, thank you. I was like, what is this word? Internship credits for upper-level electives. So I got credit so that I could graduate on time. And then I moved to New York in the fall and then started auditioning for everything I could get my hands on.
And about 9 months
about 9 months later, I booked the Paper Mill Playhouse run of Newsies.
Let's talk about that, because you go from watching and being inspired by it to being part of the original cast. I mean, you're on the original recording. I mean, it's as legitimately a Disney thing as you can do, Your experience with the film, how did that, was it a challenge to go into it that way, or was it exciting?
I would say it was just exciting. I mean,
pure excitement.
Pure excitement. Yeah, I mean, I saw the breakdown come out, and Britta knows this phrase, but every man boy in New York was ready to be in the show.
Every man who could pose as a boy.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're that target generation. I'm on actually kind of the young side for it. And then, all the way up through my brother's age, everybody knew it was coming and was very, very excited about it. So I ended up going to the open call because there was just so many people that I couldn't get in for the union calls because at the time I was not a member of Actors Equity. So I went to the open call and I went through like 3 dance calls and a bunch of singing. And I remember the final callback for the Paper Mill Playhouse run. We were at Ballet Hispanico, and I think there was more people behind the table than there were auditioning. Because for a Disney theatrical production, you don't just have like your standard director, choreographer, music director. You have all of those people, but then you also have the entire Disney theatrical team. You know, Tom Schumacher sitting behind the table, and
they don't mess around.
Yeah, they don't mess around. But it was just the excitement around it from everybody. Everyone was just, they were looking forward to seeing what this could become. Because at that time, they didn't know. It was really awesome, like getting to be with it kind of from the ground up and, you know, watch it turn into kind of the surprise Broadway hit.
I think there's something completely different about being in a Broadway show that is a Disney property from both fan perspective and like the people who are in the show. What do you think makes a Disney Broadway thing so different or feel different?
I mean, there's definitely a level of expectation from an audience perspective. You know, with a name like Disney, you're expecting a certain level of quality and definitely a level of magic
and like heart
that you don't necessarily have the same expectations when you're going to see just another random Broadway show. The creative teams that Disney brings in and the talent that they can procure really is like some of the best. And I think with Newsies, we were fortunate because even though it has this cult following to it, the movie itself is fairly realistic. You know, there's no fantasy, there's no magic. It's kind of like a dirty, grimy Disney film. So I think that was beneficial to us taking the movie and putting it on the stage.
Let me ask the cliche question because I think it's always interesting and people want to know. What are the big Disney names that showed up that you got to meet during this experience?
I got to do a run through for Bob Iger. That was pretty crazy. They're like, yeah, some of the Disney executives are coming. They didn't say, oh, Bob Iger's going to walk through the door in a moment. They're like, okay, cool. Some Disney executives. And then he walks through the door. You're like, oh,
the
not
Disney
just
executive.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the one.
The guy. So that was pretty crazy. Obviously getting to interact with Tom Schumacher is pretty awesome because he really has made Disney theatrical what it is. And you know, he's sort of a New York legend. And I didn't just like get to meet him once. I really got into chat.
Yeah, he like knows you.
Yeah, like have meaningful interactions with him. He's a really awesome guy.
Evan, correct me if I'm wrong here. Were you there with the whole run of the show or the majority of it?
I was there the whole time, from Paper Mill through the Broadway closing. So on Broadway, we did 1,005 performances, which is a crazy, crazy number.
Should have been more.
Thanks. Yeah, so I was there the whole time.
What was that final curtain bow like for you then?
Oh, man. It was emotional. You know, having gotten to be there the whole time. And, you know, after Paper Mill, we didn't know what was going to happen to the show. We didn't know if they were just going to say, okay, cool, this works. We're going to release the rights and let people do it. We didn't know if it was going to do another out-of-town run, if it was going to go to Broadway. We knew nothing. And also, like, if it went to Broadway, would I get to go with it? There's just so many questions like that. So getting to be with it the whole time and have it go from not knowing if it's going to go to Broadway to a limited Broadway run to an open Broadway run, you know, that in itself is an emotional roller coaster. And then getting to share that closing night and like be there and to listen to people just screaming their heads off because it's the last time they get to see the show, and getting to, share it with
the cast. They're so close.
Yeah,
it was
family. Family, exactly.
They're still our family.
Tommy Bracco would often lead an inspirational speech at some point. Usually there was at the Niederlander, there's this alleyway that leads to our stage door. So usually we would go hang out there, and Tommy would give a wonderful inspirational speech. But, all right, boys, here we are. This is our last time. Tommy Bracco.
So
I love
precious.
him. He's the sweetest.
A bunch of newsies in an alley getting inspired speeches seems like entirely appropriate.
Right? Yeah, exactly. From
Very fitting.
our official Staten Island Spock Conlon. We had all kinds of super random things we would do. We used to play heads up in the dressing room before the top of the show, and we warmed up on stage behind the towers. So if people were in the audience early, they would maybe catch a glimpse of a newsie, doing jumping jacks.
Britta, at the same time, you're in New York as well.
Yeah.
And you're in the grind, correct? At this point, you're doing the thing, looking for work. What are you up to?
Yeah. So basically, Evan was in New York for a year before me, and then when I graduated, I moved here September 2011. I will say it was a challenge for me because it's not normal, Evan's journey. He is totally deserving of everything, of course. But, he was very fortunate in the way that things panned out for him. And he kind of is the exception to the rule, because you go
the pace at which things happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And you go to college and they're like, just know it's going to be really hard. It's going to be a grind and you may never get to where you want. They're very realistic with you. And then I'm watching my partner's journey, his dreams come true, immediately. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. So I will say that was definitely a challenge for me. Because even though he would never, ever put me in his shadow, I just kind of felt in the shadow a lot of times because I was in the grind auditioning, not equity, so not part of the union, just going to open calls at 6 a.m. and waiting all day to maybe get put on a list, to maybe be seen, but usually not. And so it was I was so happy for him, but I was witnessing the exception to the rule while struggling and not being the exception to the rule.
It's a major contrast to have half of your life be literally some weird 1930s, you're gonna be a star sort of thing. And then on the other side, you're doing exactly what everybody else is doing. And it's, but eventually you decide you want to pursue something, a calling that you had, which is you wanted to come back to Florida, and you really wanted to do some work at Disney. When did you decide to make that choice, and how did that all come about?
Yeah, so this was about, I guess, 5 years into being in the city, and I was I'd done so many things. And don't get me wrong, I was performing. It was just in the most random things, not Broadway, which my dream was never I need to do Broadway, so I was cool with doing random things. But I got to a point where I was oh, this city is hard and I kind of want to maybe try something different. And I've been talking to him a lot about maybe trying Chicago or just a different vibe and seeing how that went. And he was very much still needing to be here. And so that was, hard. It was a struggle because we're how are we going to do this? We don't want to be long distance. We hate it. We've done it before. No, thanks.
The worst.
So, so we were trying to figure that out. And then I just happened to go in for an open call for Disney. It was in New York. And it was for this, it was all very vague. They can't really tell you much, but it was this Jedi show. They didn't really say much about it. They just said you should have some sage combat skills, and the description was basically me. It was athletic, younger, happy spirit, but can lead a crowd. And so I was all right. So I went in for it and got really good feedback, got a call back. And the craziest part was that I knew it would be in Florida, but with auditions here, a lot of times you just audition for things and you don't really let yourself think of how is this all going to pan out? I'm just going to audition. And if I get there, then I'll figure it out, So in the callback, I read and did a whole choreographed lightsaber routine. And then they were like, they brought us in. We're thinking they're going to tell us, like, we'll let you know. And they bring 3 of us in, and they just on the spot say, all right, so we really like you guys and we want to offer you the job. So this means that you would take your equity card and you would leave here in 2 weeks, move to Florida, and it's an 11-month contract. And it was just like such a shock. I was absolutely elated to be given this opportunity, but then like also just like so confused how anything would work because I knew that Evan couldn't go. And I was just, I don't know. There were so many questions. So then I like left on this like cloud 9, but then like burst into tears like 5 minutes later, like, how am I actually going to do this? Oh my gosh, I don't know. It was just so fast. But it was just very obvious it was right, especially with the timing of me wanting to get out and try something new. And there wasn't much for me at that moment. And it was just right. I knew it was right, and I knew I needed to do it. And Evan knew as well. And when I called him, he's like, I knew you were going to get it. I think he was out of town, too, of course.
Probably.
He's like, I knew you were going to get it. And he's like, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And, like, on my mom, like, freaking out. And so I basically told them, like, the next day, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so the next 2 weeks was just a whirlwind of, like, all right, I want to change. Here it goes. I'm going to do it. And we talked, and Evan decided he would stay in New York, and I would go, and I could stay with my brother who was working at Disney, and just going to go on this adventure. And I knew it was right. So I went. And Evan came with me and moved me in. And the whole time we were just like, how is this going to work? We had just gotten married.
Yeah, we'd been married, I don't know, like 6 months at that point.
And we were like, we're newlyweds. Like, we want to be together.
See you later.
Yeah, it was very strange. And so when he had moved me in, we had talked about like, well, we don't know. Who knows? Maybe something will bring me here. Evan was like, maybe something will bring me here. We'll figure it out. And then at that time, Lindsay, who is our sister-in-law, Evan's brother, so Ryan's wife, Lindsay, she works for Tara Rubin Casting, which is a pretty big agency in the city, casting agency. And she's like, oh, I have a friend and they have connections with Disney and there's this position. So this position that Evan would be perfect for. And it was, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. The position was for a maintenance choreographer, which
sounds crazy. Someone who choreographs mopping routines. But.
Exactly. But actually, the maintenance choreographers oversee all of the shows and parades on property. And basically they maintain them. They make sure they are up to Disney standards. And when new cast members join a show, the maintenance choreographers run rehearsals. And then we do all sorts of other things on property, but yeah, we're taking notes and giving notes, and that is the quick and dirty overview of what a maintenance choreographer does. So yeah, Lindsay shot me a text, was like, hey, my friend mentioned this position is opening up. You know, if you have any interest, like you should apply. Would you like
to go be with your wife or not?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and you didn't want to come.
Yeah.
Like you didn't want to leave here.
I was very resistant.
But the last thing I wanted was to make him come here. Like we're big on not wanting to build up resentment. I don't know, it's just this thing we don't want to do.
Smart.
So we were like, we don't ever want to like force each other to do anything for the other. You know, we're willing to compromise and figure it out, but we don't ever want to be like the reason that the other one does something that they don't actually really want to do. So yeah. I was big on like, please do not do this for me. Do it if you're wanting, I mean, yes, for me, but like do it if you feel like it's okay for you to leave the city and to do this. And of course he auditioned and was like overqualified, and they were like obsessed with him and wanted to have him right away. So then it was just a matter of like, was he willing and wanting to take it.
Yep.
So that there was a few weeks there that were quite stressful. I had already been there on my own for a few months, and he was kind of just talking with everyone about it, his parents, his brother, trying to figure out if it was the right thing for him. And on his own, I mean, you can say.
Yeah, I on my own, I decided that it was the right move. Of course, first of all, getting to be with Britta is a high priority, but also just the opportunity to try something completely different from what I was doing. I mean, the experience alone would be absolutely worth it. Getting to work for a prestigious company like Disney again, getting to be on the other side of things was going to be great. And it was going to definitely be a learning experience. And
getting out of the city.
Getting out of the city was going to be good too.
And my family lives an hour and a half away from Disney. So getting to be with them more was a huge draw as well.
Yeah. So I ended up saying yes to the position.
So I'm curious what your responses will be to this question from different viewpoints. I'm curious about the culture of Disney performers, and what that looks like. Some of them are in parades, some of them are in shows, some are costume characters. There's a lot of different things you can do. And as you guys say, they come from New York, they come from different places, and everyone kind of has an idea of what a career they want and what they want to go and that sort of thing. From Britta, from a cast member perspective, what was the culture of Disney performers like for you?
Basically, I was coming from the New York scene as well as everyone else who had been cast in this new Jedi show. So it was kind of funny. We all met and we all moved to Florida at the same time from New York. So I had that crew. And then we basically were thrust into the performance world of Disney, which is mostly people. I'd say most of them are people who have, for the most part, worked exclusively at Disney, and that is where their career started and where they have chosen to stay. So it's different from New York, where people go from job to job. At Disney, you can really have a life. They're incredible with their benefits, and so if you're a performer there, especially an actor's equity performer, which I took my equity card when I joined, so I was that. You can afford to live a life, settle down, have a family, have a house, and so all of a sudden I'm going from this crazy city where people are trying to make rent every month to month, even though they're in a Broadway show. To and they're all living in closets, to people living in these incredible houses, and they have really good health benefits, and they're starting a family, and they're able to kind of have a normal life but also perform. So it was this strange world I'd never experienced. And then on the other hand of that, there was, in our show, not everyone is an equity performer there. So you meet a lot of people. So the character performers are not part of the actors union. They are part of Disney's union, which is called the Teamsters, I believe. And they, so they're in totally different pay situations and benefit situations. And so the character performers in our show, Kylo Ren and Darth Vader and Darth Maul, all of them, they're actually considered character performers. They're not equity. And there's all these rules of what makes what. If you're an equity performer, you have to have kind of a substantial speaking role, or you sing live, or there's different things. So all the shows are kind of a mix of different levels of that. And so I kind of got thrust into that and learned about it because I was totally lost. So I was asking so many questions and meeting so many different people and learning from them, and honestly making some of the best friends still to this day. That's one thing I'd say about Disney is it really does feel like a family. And I made friends really fast there because people were incredibly open to accepting me into their world, and it was not cold like you get a lot in the city. People were very, very talkative and receptive and wanting to show me around and help me out. And so I created a really, really strong base of friends, some equity, some Teamsters, all across the board. And learned what it meant to be a Disney performer and how vastly different it can be. You know what I mean? And there are so many of us, and we're all on our own completely different contract. And it's just so interesting. And being equity there is not like being equity here. Disney has a specific agreement with Actors Equity. So they make like their own rules under like the umbrella of Disney. So learning how that worked and how it was different from being equity here. I mean, honestly, I was still learning 11 months later. My contract was 11 months long, and I was still figuring things out the whole time.
Evan, for you as a choreographer, you are in a instructor sort of position. You have a little more authority, probably. What was the viewpoint for you looking at this culture?
You know, it was interesting being on the other side of the table, you know, in
Kind of corporate-y.
Yeah, kind of corporate-y, and being in a authoritative position, because I'm not necessarily like, you know, like being in a power position. So that in and of itself was a new experience for me. You know, having to give notes and deal with people either saying, okay, great, yeah, I'll do that, or throwing an excuse back at you and be like, well, like, and you're like, okay, sure.
Well, and Disney has very specific ways that you give notes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very systematic.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they are as successful as they are. But like, you can't just give notes like you would in New York, like, hey, do this better, or you're going to get fired. It's like, it doesn't work that way. So figuring that out, I know.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Like kind of jumping through some hoops on like, you know, how you're wording corrections and things like that. That was definitely a challenge for me. Having to, you know, watch how you phrase things so that it cannot be interpreted it in the wrong way. You have to be very, very thoughtful with your notes. But in terms of like dealing with cast members and performers, you know, you kind of end up with a couple different groups of people. Some people are at Disney as a like initial performance job. They know they want to pursue performance as a like career, so they're just trying to get as much experience as they can before they, you know, head off to New York, LA, Chicago, to pursue other things. And then there's definitely a group of, for lack of a better term, like lifers who are absolutely content being at Disney and, you know, having the comfort and security of benefits and healthcare and all of those things. And, you know,
and they'll do like several different shows or different, you know, like there's so many different projects going on at Disney all the time that you're able to a lot of times hop around to different things, you know, so it's not like you're stuck with one specific show forever.
Yeah, it can. I mean, I think that's one of the really awesome things about Disney is staying there. You can do so many different projects so that it does stay fresh and you're not like, well, I'm doing Festival of Fantasy for 15 years, and that is the only parade I have ever done.
Yeah, and Disney's always trying to keep it fresh, so
yeah,
it's always changing, and so they're always in rehearsals for something new, or you know, yeah.
Britta, let's talk about being a Jedi. I think that's since that's part of your resume now. Were you a Star Wars fan before you got the opportunity to be in Jedi training, or?
Turns out, not really. It wasn't that I wasn't a fan. I just didn't grow up with it. And so I didn't really know that much about it. You know what I mean? I had like seen the new ones, but like I hadn't seen the originals. Oh my gosh, I feel so horrible saying that. But of course, Evan and his brothers are like hardcore Star Wars fans. So they were like so jazzed when I got this, and I
got to tell people that my wife is a Jedi.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that.
And they immediately were like, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to watch this. And of course they're like, you know, this is the order you need to watch them in. And we like, so for the 2 weeks leading up to me coming to Disney, I basically went through everything and was like getting coached on Star Wars and like what it means to people and how it all began, and you know which characters are the favorites or whatever. So I definitely like got a crash course in Star Wars, which then continued for the entire time I was there, because most of the people doing the project with me were huge fans. Like our first day, we have like a meeting with everyone. And they're like, "What's your favorite movie and why?" And like, so I was like, "Thank God I had rewatched it." But yeah, so. That's a big thing, is being a Jedi you have a responsibility to know your world, of course. And like as a performer, that's such a big thing. So I was constantly learning new things from people and trying to like ask questions so that when the kids come up to me and they ask me specific questions, I'm not just like, who's that? You know what I mean? Like I really had to be on my game.
For those who might not know, this show is very interactive with children. They get the opportunity to do a little bit of lightsaber play, that sort of thing. So it's very unique because it's not necessarily a show where you're on a stage and everyone watches you and they clap and it's over. You're really like in the mix when it comes to possibly the need for improv and things of that nature when you're dealing with a large quantity of children.
That was like the most epic part of it all, I'd say, was the kids. They were the most challenging, but also the best part of it. So we learn our show, and it's, you know, Disney again is really about like quality and like keeping that level of quality at all times. So, you know, they were very clear on like, you need to stick with the script, but like, here are the times where you could, you know, improv or play around, but you really need to like stay on track. So it was a big learning experience of like staying on track while also keeping it fresh. Cause we would do 5 shows a day, 5 shifts a week. So 25 shows a week. And, we would have 30 kids every show. And I came from the New York world of improv, which is very vulgar and like anything goes and like just all the profanity, just completely different world to like Disney, where they're like, don't say anything that could even remotely be thought of as like negative or weird. So that I think in the beginning, I was very, very by the book. And it would also depend on who my counterpart was. So the other main role in my show is like an older, wizened Jedi who, you know, has learned the ways of the Force and he knows to respect it and he knows like to trust it and is kind of trying to like rein me in and rein my powers in. And so it would depend on who I was with. So as a team, you know, we would have different people, different shifts every week and be with totally different people. It was not like I was with one person all the time. I was with different people every shift. So it would definitely depend on that. In the beginning, I was very, very by the book. But then as I worked with different people and some of them were really into the improv side of things, I would like be able to play more with them and learn when it was right to play with this person or when this person wanted to really stick with the script. And the kids, of course, they were the fuel to everything. So for them, it's not a little thing. It was like a life-changing experience. And
it's real. It's real for those kids.
And that is Disney. That's magic. And that was what made it such an incredible experience, was just watching these kids live their dreams and face their fears in such a real way for them. And to get to be a part of that and like guide them was like very emotional and definitely the best part of the whole thing. And I loved when there was like the kids they did it all for you. They did all the work, all the comedic timing just came from watching them and just kind of like remarking on them, because there would be kids who go in guns blazing, like so intense. And you just like, you're there to like protect them and keep them safe, but also like let them do their thing and shine. And you just get to comment and be like, nailing it. Or like, whoa, someone had too much caffeine today. Like, where were you last? Like, did you just eat like 7 Mickey bars? Like, I don't know. You just got to kind of like be really fun and play around with them based on what they were giving you. And there were moments where the kids would be really scared and you got to be that person who was holding them and telling them they could do it. And then you would see them shift and be like, I can do it, and just be on top of the world at the end. So I'd say there was stress and anxiety, making sure the kids were okay and they didn't like go rogue. But once you got used to that part and like being able to naturally do that part, the possibilities were endless, and like playing around with them and seeing what you could bring out in each of them, you know, it was so cool. And they looked up to you like you were the best thing in the world. And there's not much better than that, you know? So eventually you both decide to go back to New York after your contracts are up. Was there a allure to the idea of staying and lifing it like so many others, or were you ready to go? Oh, man. So, yes, there was definitely a lure to it, because we saw so many people there like creating these lives and buying houses and starting families, which is something we desperately want to do. We're performers, but we're not the kind of performers who are like, we're going to do this forever. We want to we'll perform, but we want to like have a life. Stability. That's a nice thought. So there was a massive lure for that. And also being close to family and making good friends who a lot of them had taken the journey from New York and they were staying in, at Disney permanently. And so they, of course, were like, you have to stay. So we were getting like a lot of pressure from them, but we understood it because and we were like very, very conscious to really consider that for the whole time we were there and think on it and let ourselves like naturally come to a place of clarity with it, but not like be resistant to it. But yeah, if you want to speak to this.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely took into consideration staying and, trying to get different contracts. But at the end of the day, I think that the timing more than anything, it just wasn't quite the right time for us.
Yeah, I've still had a lot he wanted to do in the city, and I had my equity card. And because we had come from New York and we hadn't just done Disney, we knew how many opportunities were out there. And I think it was like we couldn't not know that. We couldn't forget that there was like this whole big world out there waiting for us to like explore and like try. So we weren't ready to like be settled anywhere. And like now that I had my equity card, I could go back to the city, and we're just shifting it to being able to do everything like online now. So you can like sign up for auditions online if you're equity. And that was like a huge game changer and very appealing to me. So I wouldn't have to get up at 6 a.m. in the snow and wait outside for hours anymore. So it was just kind of like, we had this like restlessness and we knew we had to continue on. And we also knew that we left Disney really, really on good terms. We didn't like burn any bridges. We were very clear how much we loved everyone and loved our time there. And so it was still very open. There was a very open door when we left, and it still is. Like, and we still go there and visit people all the time. And so we've kept that relationship, but we knew that we needed to come back.
Yeah.
And see the city in different eyes, with different eyes. Yeah.
So what was it like going back then? What did you see that was different?
I mean, being away from the city gives you a lot of perspective because it's stressful and exhausting, and it's just so fast-paced and high energy all the time that it really takes a toll on you if you don't get away every now and then or for, a full year. So like getting that time away gave perspective, and, it helps you realize what you do enjoy about the city. And I think for us, it gave us tools to deal with the things we don't like, and the things that are stressful and wear on us. And being away, was really great. I'm so grateful that we took the time away and got to experience a company like Disney, and, for me, do things on the other side of the table, and for Britta, like, get to have this really cool,
It was a really legit job. It was awesome. Like, I got to have people like, I got my mic set up and like get to be kind of like a star in a way, which is something I hadn't really experienced. And, I had been making these small sacrifices for him, which he had never asked me to do, but I wanted to do, like, and like compromises for him to be pursuing things in the city. And so then it was the first time that he was able to do that for me. And I got to feel that, support, and also feeling of just being like a rock star Jedi. And I will forever be thankful for that confidence that it gave me, and to like feel success in that way, as opposed to all the rejection that you can feel in the city. So then coming back into the city, I just had like a newfound confidence. And also, I was never crazy about the city for like the entire time before we left to go to Florida. And when I came back, I really developed this new appreciation. And it's not like we're going to be here forever, but I've learned, like we said, like to appreciate things that I just had totally taken for granted because I hadn't ever stepped back and like tried something different, So it gave us new eyes and really, really helped like invigorate us and give us some clarity on like what we truly want and what we're willing to do.
So let's talk about what you guys have been up to recently. Evan, what are you currently doing, or what did you just completed a long run?
Most recently I was in the revival of Cats, which was a crazy, weird, wonderful experience. So I closed that in December, and I've been running around doing a lot of super random but really, really fulfilling projects. I got to do a dance narrative called Alexa, which is all about the Amazon Alexa. It's this like kind of love triangle.
He was the lead.
I played the guy, and it's this love triangle between the guy, the Amazon Alexa, and a real girl. And then I've been teaching a lot, which is, it's really great. I love, not that I love not being in shows, but when I have time off, being able to go and work with young artists, and, you know, they are just so inspiring. And the stuff that these kids are doing is mind blowing. The talent is just out of bounds. And it's so inspiring for me to come back to the city and be rejuvenated by working with these students.
Britta, you shifted a little bit away from the arts a little bit, and you went into personal training. Tell us a little bit about Weirdo Wellness and where that all came from.
So actually, when I was at Disney, the job was really physical, and I've always been a performer. I've always been a very like physically active person, like gym person, if you will. And so, but like doing this show, you had to stay like really fit and on top of your game because it was outside and long hours and doing all kinds of weird Jedi, you know, mind games. Anyway, so that was weird. So when I was there, I met two people who are now like my best friends. One of them was in the show with me. He was my counterpart, Jedi, and then his wife, Elizabeth. So Preston is who I was in the show with, and Elizabeth is his wife, and she is a performer turned personal trainer. And when I was there, I started training with her, taking her classes, learning a lot about kettlebells and doing a bunch of like kettlebell classes with her. And I started this like, you know, fitness program that she puts on, and just learning more about that and following that so that I could stay fit. And I started to like just become really interested and invested, and I would go to her classes and kind of like help her out with teaching things. And I don't know, I started realizing that I had a big interest in it, and people were starting to approach me being like, wow, you're so in shape. Like, what do you do? And like asking me for help. And so I started kind of training people. And then I was like, maybe I should get my, you know, personal training certification, because like there's no harm in that. I could do it as like a side thing, and I could make money on the side training people. So I got that through NASM, NASM, National Academy for Sports Medicine. And I was doing that while still just performing and doing everything. And then once I got it, I was like, God, I like really like doing this. Maybe I should like create some kind of a specific, I don't know, niche that I could work towards within the physical fitness world. And so I always wear really weird clothes to work out. It's actually, that's always been a weird thing for me. I've like never matched, and I don't even like think of it as being weird, but then I'll look at myself and be like, oh, this looks really weird. It's just like a bunch of strange, you know, clothing combinations that just don't go together at all. So when I was in Florida at the end of that time, we created an Instagram called My Weird Ass Fitness. And so I started posting about that and getting, you know, people interested. And then I was like, wait, this isn't enough. I want to do more. And I started getting really into the nutrition side of things. Evan and I have been on a journey of clean eating for years, and we're finally at a point where it's like very, very much a part of our lives, and we feel very comfortable in it, and we found our balance. And so I started realizing I want to help other people do this. And people, again, were approaching me a lot about it. So now I'm getting my nutrition certification as well. And I basically have decided to create a business called Weirdo Wellness, which includes my fitness training and my nutrition consulting, and I sell essential oils. It's kind of all things wellness. And I just decided, just kind of like with the Disney thing, to like go all in and just do it. So I have stepped away from theater for, it's only been about 4 months now, where I've decided to go all in with training and nutrition, and just seeing where that leads me in my own business, Weirdo Wellness, and through Mark Fisher Fitness, which I now am a faculty member, staff member, faculty. Well, you know, it feels very theatrical. I don't know. Staff member there.
Yeah, you're teaching.
I'm teaching. I'm a teacher. So I teach 15-person classes, and I teach semi-privates, which is 3 people at a time. And that's more of like a heavyweight strength training kind of thing. And I'm just like, I'm leaning in. I'm leaning into it. It's incredible how much it feels like a performance job, because you do have to bring yourself and be really authentic and really like bring your energy and guide this group of people, and try to distract them from the fact that they're lifting really heavy weights and just make them excited to do it. So it's been so in line with performing. It's so funny. And I still feel very much in that world because I'm able to train a lot of people that are in theater, and we just constantly talk about theater and performance still every day. And I don't know, it's very like connected to everything.
Well, Britta, Evan, thank you so much for being weird with me and coming on Dreamfinders. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
And that's it for this episode of Dreamfinders. It was so great to talk with Evan and Britta, and if you'd like to keep up with them, there are lots of ways. You can find Evan on Facebook, Instagram, and now on Twitch at Kasprzak Games. You can learn all about Britta and Weirdo Wellness at weirdowellness.com or on Instagram at MyWeirdAssFitness. Our podcast artwork is provided by JP Tanner. Find his other work at tanwoodcreative.com. This podcast is distributed by WDW News Today, the worldwide leader in Disney Parks news. Read all they have to offer at WDWNT.com. Dreamfinders is hosted and produced by yours truly, and you can follow me on Twitter at SomeStuffISaid. Tell your friends about the show, and please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. Also, if you or someone else you know would make a great guest on this program, feel free to email us at dreamfinders@wdwnt.com. I'm Nathan Hartman, and remember, if we can dream it, then we can do it. Dreamfinders is sponsored by Never Grow Up Vacations, the official travel partner of WDWNT.com. Never Grow Up Vacations specializes in trips to Disney destinations around the world. So be like us and never grow up. Head over to nevergrowupvacations.com to book your next trip today.